The MacBook Pro. Pro's a tough word these days because I think Apple has in some way damaged the existing Pro brand with something that is genuinely Pro. But at the same time, they've gone back to their roots with the Pro brand, and that's exactly what the Pro user wants. This is the brand new MacBook Pro 16-inch with M1 Pro chip. So here it is here. She's a big beast. That's the box for the brand new 16-inch MacBook Pro. And here it is right here. Straight out of the box, this is a very different MacBook. For several years now, the design has been quite similar across the MacBook Pro range. And under the hood, you've been packed with the Intel Core processors, which have pushed performance everywhere the Pro users have needed. However, last year when Apple introduced the Apple Silicon, the M1 chip, we saw a completely different level of performance, an individual level of performance that I thought was fantastic. I thought it did everything I needed as a basic video editor. But I've just realized that that's like an i3 compared to this might be an i7 if you want to go Intel terms, just in terms of how you adjust your mind to where these chips sit. I remember always thinking of the i3, the i5 and the i7 as your, good, better, best. Now this is not to correlate the performance of those to the Apple Silicon. It's just to try and put your mind in a place where you need to understand the M1 is your Apple Silicon. The M1 Pro is your next level, Pro level performance. The M1 Max goes even higher. I've been testing the M1 Pro, and I think that anyone this week that tells you they've tested the M1 Pro or M1 Max to the hilt, you need to ask yourselves who they are. If they're a cinematographer, if they're a color grader, if they're a high-end app developer, they're the people I want to know what they think of this device. I'm just here to tell you what I think about it from an average user perspective. And I think it's way too much. It's more than the average user could ever possibly want. But I think a lot of average consumers want that. I think a lot of people want to have that headroom. You don't want to just get the 13-inch Pro and know that you've got performance if you need it. You want performance that will blow your mind if you need it, and that's what this is. I did some very basic video editing here. So, if we just look at this here, this is a timeline here editing this very video. And look, I found it quite amazing when I was exporting basic videos, and I'm being very clear here, basic videos is all I've been doing. I just don't think I've ever had to wait such a short amount of time for an export. Normally you hit that export button in the top of iMovie or using Premiere or whatever you might be using, Final Cut, and you go and get a coffee while you wait and come back for your render to have completed and your export to have been done. I feel like with a couple of videos I've done, it's happened in such a short amount of time. That's exactly what you want from this. Now, from a pure hardware perspective, man, this thing is exactly what you want, right? You've got a HDMI slot. Now, that HDMI slot is outputting 4K 60 frames per second. Now, from an editor's point of view, if you're working with a director or a cinematographer or someone who wants to view the cut, you whack it up to a 4K TV that's capable of 60 frames per second, and what they're outputting is actually what you're editing. A 4K 60 frames per second video. Your SD card slot is, oh my goodness me. Thank you. Thank you, Apple. Not that I don't have a lot of dongles available for the USB-C Thunderbolt connections of the MacBook Pros that I've already had, but to not have to carry a dongle around, to not have to go looking for the dongle, to just be able to put the SD card in the slot and import, thank you. And I think that's the message from a lot of Pro consumers. It's going to be a bit tainted with why did you take it away from us in the first place, but it's going to be an overall thank you. Huge speakers on this 16-inch, proper function keys, 3 USB-C Thunderbolt 4 connections and MagSafe power. Now let's talk power for a minute. I ran this laptop down to 0, like it went flat 2 days in a row. Now, I would estimate 12 to 14 hours, probably 12 and a half hours is how long it took me to run it down just on web browsing, just having the web open and a YouTube video running in the background. So in terms of battery life, you are getting all day from a workday perspective, 12 plus hours, solid battery life, right? So excellent battery life, but it's the power coming in that matters. I hooked up the MagSafe charger and got 86, 85% battery in an hour and a half. Apple say 30 minutes, 50%. I didn't test that, I had things to do. But I found it fascinating that I then took out the MagSafe and used the big block power adapter from the MacBook Pro, the older MacBook Pro, USB-C input, and got the same charge time to 80%. Now you probably won't get the same charge time to 50% that you'll get from the MagSafe, because the MagSafe is capable of, I think, 140 watt. It's some serious power coming in, and I think it's that initial burst of energy that is the key. The fast charge initial burst up to 50% is where the MagSafe comes in. The USB-C is not capable of pushing through that amount of power, but I don't know who is needing 30 minutes of charging. I think an hour is plenty of time to charge a device for rapid usage, and you're going to get between 50 and 80%. I was pretty blown away to get 80% of such a big beast in just an hour and a half. And as I say, the down time, the time it took to chew through the battery, was more like 12 to 13 hours, which I think is utterly respectable for a beast this big. Now, one of the things that a lot of people have talked about here is the notch. And I'm going to tell you, I haven't noticed it once. Not once. The only times I've noticed is when I was wanting to understand how it worked. Now, just so you know, your mouse disappears behind the notch. So I guess you can understand the notch sits in front of the screen. But I'm told, and I haven't been able to find an app that needs it, and it probably doesn't help that I'm on the 16, but your menu bars, so where you've got File, Edit, View, all those kind of things, the software of Mac OS Monterey knows about the notch. And so it will adjust. It will, in fact, I think it's compressing. I feel like the text is ever so slightly compressed in there on the side when it is a long menu bar, but I believe it will go onto the other side of the notch. For the most part, in 99% of your usage, whether you are video editing or not, you're actually not using that area of the screen. When you go full screen on an app, so I'm using iMovie here, that's a smaller screen there. Let me go full screen with the green button. It doesn't use that portion of the screen. It actually uses the, 1610 wide screen. And so that top area of the screen is not actually utilized by a full screen view. So you're never being impeded by the notch. If you're watching a full screen video, you're getting that. You've got 1610 available. Your 16:9 widescreen videos are actually going to fill a smaller part of the screen. The notch sits in an extra ratio of the screen. So anyone that tells you, and if you move your mouse in full screen mode, you obviously get the menu bar and you lose the mouse underneath the notch. If it's black, you can't even see that it's there, but you weirdly lose your mouse thinking what's going on there. Bottom line, anyone that tells you the notch is a problem is a hater, I guess. It's very intelligently done. It's a part of the screen you don't use. So I actually applaud Apple. I think it's the best use of a better webcam positioning than ever. But it's such a big notch, but it's just a FaceTime camera, 1080p. But why? Why not have Face ID? Why not include Face ID in such an expensive device so that you can have Windows Hello style Face Unlock? I mean, let's be clear, Microsoft has had that for years, so why not have that in this? I think it's a missed opportunity. So just on that FaceTime camera, let me grab my 13-inch, last year's model, and let's compare the video. So what I was gonna do here was compare the video cameras on both, but it won't record video in the photo booth. Now there could be a bug in Monterey, I don't know, but using Photo Booth, the Apple software, I can't record video. But I can look at it and go, it's doing a much better job with the bright light behind me. It's a much whiter, much brighter look on the camera, on the screen. And I think the frames per second is much higher. I'm seeing a frame rate lag on my old 13 here. Look, in the end, you're going to get better quality, FaceTime, Zoom calls, video conferencing from this new MacBook Pro than the old one. Last thing I'll say is this about sound. I did play some spatial audio examples. I played music, and it's good. It's very good. But then I went, hang on a minute, am I being kind of put off by this? And I got a JBL speaker and I sat it next to me and I played music and I went, oh God, it's so much better listening to music through speakers. So while the sound is excellent, it doesn't replace having speakers. And while spatial audio is true and Dolby Atmos is there, you know, I put AirPods in and I went, oh my God, it's so much better. Like, it's there, but I've never loved pretend surround sound. I've never loved the idea of something especially something sitting in front of you like this, trying to put sound behind me and above me. It's just never really done it for me. Put headphones in like AirPods and really blow your mind with spatial audio. Great quality audio, but you know, it's not like it's right home about kind of change your world audio. It's good. It's very good. It's better than anything before, but I'm just trying to understand, you know, from a pro level, I think you would still be absolutely, especially if you're a sound editor using this, you would go AirPods Max, like you go all the way. And that would be the way you would edit spatial audio and those kind of things. I love it. I think it's enormous. I think I love the 16-inch for what you can do on screen in terms of video editing and the like. But at the price, I would stick with a standard Pro because, frankly, I don't need those massive next level features. The reality is the Pro brand is confused. This is a MacBook Pro, but this is a MacBook Pro. I think what we need, and maybe if Apple had better exposed their timeline, what we need is for this to be the MacBook, then to have the MacBook Air, and this to be the MacBook Pro. Whether we continue to see a 13-inch M1 MacBook Pro without HDMI and all that kind of stuff, I think remains to be seen. If I was plotting out the marketing roadmap, I would have MacBook Air, I would have MacBook, being that beast there with the M1, and then I would retain the Pro brand for these glorious beasts with the Pro level inputs, Pro level keyboard, Pro level screen, Pro level performance. This is everything Pro level. They've nailed it. It's a high price to pay, over $3,000, $5,000. I spec'd one out at $9,000 and then went, stop it, you're an idiot. You don't need it, but maybe I do. The MacBook Pro, properly Pro.